What's up, guys? In this episode, I talked to Vincent Dizenzo, who is a member of the team elitefts along with myself. And you get to know him a little bit. He is one of the best bench pressers of all time, benching all kinds of crazy numbers, but he benched 600, over 600 raw in three different weight classes. He's benched over 900. He's benched 700 multiple times in multi-ply gear. But right now he is best known for his transformation. He's gone from being over 300 pounds to now being below 200. And that journey that's taken quite some time to get there, with its ups and downs that anybody who's ever tried to lose weight and keep it off has gone through. And I think we touch on a lot of those things that drove him to do that. And I think there's some really good life takeaways in this one. Not a lot of training. If you guys are into that training and you wanted to learn some bench press techniques, we didn't go over any of that. So your loss. We did that in secret, and I kept it all for myself so that I can bench appropriately again. But I love this interview. I love having interviews like this where we get to talk about life and we get to talk about human interaction and those things. I think that is the most crucial thing in life, is to be able to communicate and express those things with people and build those relationships. And we touch on all that. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. It's a little bit different than the bells and whistles of strength training, but it's what I prefer. And I absolutely enjoyed this interview. I hope you guys do too. If you guys are interested in supporting the podcast, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can go to iTunes, leave a review and a 5-star rating. It is going to be greatly appreciated. And then also you can go to these two sponsors. We have Coaches Corner University, coachescorneru.com, and we just launched the website. So please go and check it out. It's the complete resource for coaches and athletes to, pretty much build any type of repertoire to be a coach in any manner whatsoever, not just strength athletes, but anybody who's interested in being a barbell athlete in any sort. We're even going to cover some sports specific stuff as well. So make sure that you guys check out the website. It is only $34.99 a month, and you get a ton of access to the coaches, live Q&As, integrated community so that you can ask questions, post up videos, and then we also are releasing lectures and modules that are going to teach you how to be a coach and an improved athlete at a university level. Then also check out subject0subs.com. We just got pink lemonade restoration in, and that flavor is amazing, guys. Switching manufacturers was one of the things that we were looking into doing, and we did that. And the reason we picked this company is because their flavor profiles are absolutely incredible. And I know you guys will love the new flavors that we're going to be coming out with. But this is the first iteration of that. So it's the pink lemonade restoration in stock. Get it while it lasts. We also have Equilibrium that is being produced as we speak and should be here any day now. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get all the new stuff for you. We have 3 new products getting worked on right now as we speak. So very excited for the company, subject0subs.com, and you can use discount code BEYOND10 to get 10% off. Hope you guys love this interview, and I will catch you next week. Welcome to Beyond the Platform. I'm your host, Tony Montgomery, and with me today I have Vincent Dizenzo. He is a member of elitefts and also an elite powerlifter, or former elite powerlifter, I guess is how you would phrase it. One of the only guys. I always try to be as ill-prepared but least disrespectful on introductions as possible. But one of the guys who's benched 600 pounds in numerous, or one of the only guys to bench 600 pounds in numerous weight classes. I think you've done it at 220 all the way up to super heavyweight, and you're the only person that has done that, I believe.
Oh, no, I actually, thank you. I wish I had done it in 3 weight classes. I think there might be a few other people, like super heavyweight, 308 and 275. And that's kind of where I said, the age and the strength and the weight loss all kind of collided at once. And it's like, everyone's like, well, you should go for 600 at 242. I'm like, I barely got it at 275. I think I'm good now.
Yeah. And you did some of that raw, but also some of that geared as well, or it was all geared?
Oh, those three were raw. I mean, I've benched. Oh God, I never competed at 222 equipped. Although I do want to put one of those crazy new bench shirts on and bench 600 at 200.
Yeah.
But I've probably benched 700 more. I definitely from 242 and up, I've been 700 or more equipped, and at 275, I hit 900 equipped.
Yeah.
So I've, I did well between raw and geared in multiple weight classes, which is something that just for me turned me on. I think that's what people need to learn about lifting. It's nobody really cares what you do, no matter what you think. The world really, there's very few outliers that the whole world's waiting to see what they lift next. But if you think the world's waiting to see what you're going to lift next, they're really not.
It's true, right? The idea of intrinsic values and drives are going to outlast the extrinsic ones all the time. So I'm guessing once you hit like a certain goal that you may have set for yourself, and maybe it wasn't worth the squeeze to try to do more out of that, you started to set these other goals, maybe weight class specific goals. What was the determining factor in, instead of continuing to progress towards maybe the idea of like an 800 or a 900-pound bench, rather than pursuing the weight loss and the goals from there?
One interesting thing about the 800 900, I just share about the 900-pound bench, which was really difficult to get to. And I actually did that at 275 on my way down. And someone's like, you should go for 1,000. I'm like, do you know how hard it was to get to 900? Worth the squeeze. And I'm like, people start talking about numbers. But actually, just a little over 11 years ago, I lost my brother to a weight-related issue. My brother was obese, and at the time I was 330 pounds, the better part of it. And I didn't want my parents to have to bury another son. They only had two children. And, I think it was more subconscious than anything. I got a little depressed, and still, I was really encouraged by so many of the team. And that's really what I love about Elite, to keep training during that difficult time. And I think subconsciously, I always said I was going to take the weight off, and I wanted to take it off when I was younger, but I kept getting stronger, as I was surprised because we didn't have as much science backed information as we do now. So, was still getting way stronger, into my early 40s. And I had suspected my strength would have long since diminished because, I had been competing at a high level for over a decade. And, I thought my strength level would diminish, and it kept going up. So where I planned to take the weight off was when, my career started to wane in lifting. And as it kept going up, I kept riding that wave. And then I think finally, because I still was making some gains. I just missed 630 at super heavyweight at a raw bench, and it was a very close miss. And again, that's the time when my brother had passed, and I was like, you know what? It's just time to start. It's time to start taking some of this weight off.
Yeah, but in your mind before he had passed, that thought was already that seed was already planted.
I always told everybody. So when I started powerlifting, I was never. To go back, I was always my nickname when I was a kid, when I was really young, was Skinny Vinny. I was never big, and I was always undersized. I played offensive line, in defensive line, in football, and I looked ridiculous compared to the rest of the line. But I always worked hard. I had a great work ethic, and it was interesting because I'll never forget in the weight room in high school, someone said, I'd never seen someone work so hard and make so few gains. So it stuck with me. I mean, it hurt, but I was a hard gainer. And, I just wanted to be one of the big guys. So that's all I ever wanted. And I knew, though, for health purposes, eventually, that weight's got to come off. There are very few, 350-pound 60, 70, 80 year olds.
Very
And
few, yeah.
even back then I kind of knew that it was, that's what I was going to do. I was going to take the weight off. And it was easier said than done,
Right.
but I think the impetus of losing my brother also was a kick in the rear, and on a number of levels. And watching guys like Dave Tate take off the weight, I had a lot of inspiration from so many different people. So, being in powerlifting, I wanted to take it off, and then I got inspired for multiple reasons, you could say.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. The idea that your entire life was towards this pursuit of being as big and as strong as you can. And the things that go with that, we all know is not necessarily the healthiest. If you're performing at the high level, you're not so much worried about health and your health markers and things like that, right? It's all it's all about performance. It's all about output. So when you're at that point in your life where that's the only thing that's driving you, um, how was it mentally to make that switch? Obviously, you had a traumatic experience that kind of forced that switch to happen. So maybe that's not necessarily relatable for everyone, but how did that switch happen for you, and how were you able to cope with that in the best way possible?
I tell everybody who wants to lose weight, and then I'll give a specific example of my wife. Powerlifting is one of the greatest weight loss tools in the world because you have goals.
Right.
Weight classes are amazing. It's one of the few sports that you can compete in, you know, as an adult. You don't have to necessarily be great at it to enjoy it, and it has specific weight class goals. So I was a big fan of J.M. Blakely, and J.M. Blakely had to hit top 10 lifts in 3 weight classes in 1 year. So that really kind of turned me on. Or I think it was 4 weight classes, top 10. So I wanted to do in a calendar year. I wanted to be in 4 different weight classes. So that really was a good kick. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to diet very well, and ended up putting most of the weight back on, but
Yeah.
it was part of the process. So for me, being able to chase after numbers in lower weight classes, unlike a lot of people now, and I'm sorry, you're going to just go off track a little bit, especially if there's any competitors watching or listening, is that so many guys now, they hold back their gains from wanting to make weight classes before they become ever really tap into their potential. The only time I really started worrying about weight classes is when I had already accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. I think Dan Green talked about he was competing 220 for a long time. And finally, when he started competing 242, he really started to even flourish more. And I think a lot of, I see guys doing their first competition. They're like, oh, well, I'm cutting to 220. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Right? It's really, and not to insult anybody, but it's really rather irrelevant what weight class you make. I mean, your goal is to get bigger and stronger if you're in lifting. Now, you don't have to get as big as you want to, but to cut 7, 8, 9 pounds when you don't know really how to do it, you've never competed before. That's where the weight classes kind of screw with people, but it's a really cool weight loss mechanism. I got my wife to finally, when she wanted to lose weight, it's like, do a competition. You have that goal to look forward to.
Yeah, it gives you something objectively to grasp onto, which is really good. And getting back to that idea of like guys not necessarily finding their true potential because they're holding themselves back within their weight classes. I think when you were competing, the stigma of the fat powerlifters like were personified, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. But nowadays, the idea of being out of shape and being a powerlifter is something that's dogmatized a lot because social media. I mean, that has to be the most relevant thing that makes people think of this idea of they always want to look a certain way. And you say someone like a Dan Green, who I had the opportunity to train with for a year. People idolize him because of the way he looks and how strong he was, and they would just assume he lives like this very much bodybuilding lifestyle, monk lifestyle, and it's like he ate whatever he wanted, right? And he just gained weight. And I mean, I seen him eat 24 cookies from a bakery in the middle of a training session, and it's like people look at that and they're like, well, I just want to do what he does, and it's like they don't factor in genetics or anything like that. Do you think if, I mean, it's hard to put yourself in that perspective, but do you think if social media was around you would have made those same sacrifices to be as big as you could to obtain the goals that you wanted to? Or do you think that you would have been a little bit more hesitant to do that? And what do you think the biggest crux is for people that have a hard time just pursuing performance over everything?
Um, I definitely still would have wanted to. I mean, the biggest difference when I look back and people say, "What would you have done differently?" My post-workout meal every training session was a box of ring dings. You know, I got all my protein in by virtue of eating 7,000 calories a day. You're eating 7,000 calories a day. You're not missing out on protein.
Right.
I don't have to worry about getting protein in when you're eating seven. By accident, I was getting, probably double weight body weight protein. I would have probably ate a little cleaner because I think my body composition would have been a little better. Clearly, I had put on a lot of muscle, but when I had taken off the weight, I thought I was gonna be ripped at 242. That's the challenge for every fat powerlifter. You realize there's a lot more you put on a lot more fat than you thought you did. But no, I think was really good about knowing, and I think I know now. I just wanted to get stronger, and mass moves mass, and when I get the time to talk to some people, I think social media has hurt in the fact that most people are looking at the outliers. The exception is not the rule. I always share with everybody, Michael Jordan, didn't make his high school basketball team, went on to be, arguably the greatest basketball player of of all time. Not every guy who gets cut one year from his high school basketball team is going to be the greatest player.
Right.
I think too many people look at the exceptions instead of the rules. Yeah, there's very few Dan Greens. I mean, seriously. Like I said, I'm a hard gainer. And one thing I did say to people, when you're looking at training programs, when you're looking at, people you aspire to be built like, I look at people who are, my height, like 5'8". I look at people who have the same type of, bone structure. I think I think social media hurts that people you're not going to be 6 feet tall and, have a 32-inch waist and squat 1,000 pounds.
Right.
So no. I think I've always had a very realistic view of myself, especially again, being someone smaller who played in sports. And I always had to work really hard, and I knew I wasn't getting stronger by staying smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also seems like you have more of that internal drive to do the things that you do too, where a lot of people are influenced by the thoughts of others or how others are going to perceive them. Is that something that you've always had? Have you ever had to battle that thought process of this is for me, or am I doing this for other people type of deal?
No, I've always been able. It's interesting because I was at a seminar where Panora and Swede were speaking, and Swede was saying that that discipline can be inherited, which I never really thought of, because sometimes I look at people like just train every day, or just
right,
watch your calories, or just stick to it. And both my parents are cancer survivors, and both both were lifelong smokers, and both the day they found out they had cancer never picked up a cigarette again. I had chewed tobacco for about 18 years. And, one day I just I'm going to quit. And I just never chewed tobacco again. So I've always had very good discipline and good drive. And I think, whether I inherited that, whether it's something nature versus nurture, I saw, my father was a very, very hard worker. My mom. So I got a great work ethic from them. And most of life is, also my father is a very self-made man. We grew up pretty poor, and he's done very well for himself. I've kind of learned you get out of life what you put into it for the most part. I mean, and I think that's kind of where social media hurts. I love it because I gather so much good information. I'm able to inspire people. Other people inspire me. I take out of it what I want, which is only positive. But other people, I think they either look at what they want or what they can't have, or who has the body they want. Whereas I'm like, ooh, what did they do to get there? They're like, why don't I look like that? Kind of maybe a woe is me attitude. And I think that's what maybe people need to work on more, the mental. And I've always been huge on the mental aspect of training and just setting goals. Huge. sports psychology has been a big part of my training, competing, my life, psychology in general for God, since I learned the value of that in my 20s.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I think the idea of how you perceive things is something that's extremely important to people, right? The idea that if you look at some of the research on stress perception, if you perceive stress as a positive thing, then it's not so damaging to your body. It doesn't release the same type of hormones. But if you perceive it as a negative thing, there's a bad cascading effect that takes place. It's the same thing with anything in life, right? Your perception of the things that you're doing and how they come about is going to allow you to either thrive in those situations or crumble. And I think that plays a huge role when it comes to your ability to perform and your ability to also stay on task, right? Not get easily distracted by the things that come about, which I see to be a big problem nowadays. Is everyone's getting pulled in multiple directions that it's hard for them to maintain their course, right? Your course was you wanted to be the best bench presser in the world, right? It wasn't I want to be the best bench presser. Then 5 years into it, like, oh, well, maybe I should focus on, being the best power lifter. Or maybe I should focus on being the best at something else. It's like you had that one track mindset, and that could be deleterious in a lot of ways, but that also can help you pursue the thing that you wanted to do. Did you ever have any issues with having such a one track mindset, whether it be health, whether it be relationships or anything else? I mean, obviously the health aspect is going to be deleterious, right? Because you were 5'9", 300 and something pounds. And then also, the performance enhancing side of things is never a healthy aspect. So how is that single mindset approach, how did that affect you positively and negatively?
Well, negatively, I can start with this. I have the world's best enabler. I've been with my wife now for we've been together for over 30 years. So we were together when she was 17, I was 21.
Oh,
And
wow.
she was always very supportive of my goal. We don't have children by choice. So my life was my own to do with what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, I just told her, I'm like, as I was setting goals. Just a little background on myself. I was a full meat lifter, and I was a far better squatter and deadlifter than I was a bencher. It took me, at 220 pounds, I couldn't bench 400 pounds with a bench shirt on. But I ruptured 2 discs in my back, and this was back, almost 25 years ago. And the surgery they wanted me to have was extremely invasive, much different than now, even though back surgery is far from perfected. So really all I had left when I got back, when I was able to rehab and get myself to lifting, was benching. And I sought out some of the best benchers in the country, both raw and equipped, which is why I think I became both a fairly accomplished raw and equipped lifter.
Yeah.
People had said if I stuck with one, I would have been better. But I enjoyed doing both, so that's why I did both. But so the negative aspects were, I had told my wife, I'm benching 600 pounds, and if I die the day after I bench 600 pounds, and this was before different life circumstances happened. But my wife, she's like, I get it. She was an athlete when she was younger. She was always very competitive. So she kind of got it, and she was an enabler. And maybe she wanted me out of her life for a little bit. I don't know. But everybody is always seen her at meets, and they know anybody who needs very supportive and a great enabler. My health wasn't great. Sleep apnea was terrible. 121 episodes an hour. The doctor said it was the worst sleep apnea he had ever experienced. Actually had to wake me up in the waiting room and give me a Lorner machine that day because he feared for me driving. My wife said I looked like a drunk driver everywhere I went. I used to have bruises on my legs. I would have to pinch myself while I was teaching because I could fall asleep anywhere at any time. I had a lifelong asthmatic, and I always had asthma even when I was young, and not heavy, but of course it got much worse, had to be heavily medicated with that. And I didn't really care that much about my health. And I'm not someone who's from childhood, I'm not someone who went for regular doctor visits. So it's not something that was always big for me, but the few occasions I did go, I know when I looked at my blood work, I really didn't care, but there were definitely lines on both ends that went where they shouldn't, colors and lines that didn't belong. So, but I never really thought about it. I was just very focused. So we lived in a condo. I laugh now because I'm like, I told my wife, I don't know how you did what you did, because if I wasn't sleeping, eating, or training, I was napping or doing some kind of recovery. So my life was all focused around it, but that's what I wanted. That was my goal. I do think I could have accomplished other things if I cared to,
Yeah.
but that was my life. And I enjoyed it, and it was my passion. It's like, someone who might be passionate about golf or tennis or what have you. It just happened to be mine was getting bigger, eating, and lifting weights. So, that was the negatives. If I had other responsibilities I didn't get to, but for me, it didn't stop me from doing the things I wanted to do at the time. When I look back, I always talked about living a more active lifestyle. And that's why I wanted to lose the weight, because I was a skier and I did different things when I was young. And I'm enjoying that second half of my life now, which is really amazing to be able to turn from that mindset of all or nothing powerlifting to, I think a lot of people, when they leave a sport, whether it's powerlifting or, I think of it as a professional athlete. And it's funny because I did make money at the sport. I did win money, and on the lowest possible level, I was somewhat of a professional athlete at a high level. I always tell people I experienced the smallest amount of fame any human being can ever experience. When you have some people ask you for your autographs a few times, I'm like, that's very bizarre. You can't walk out somewhere without talking to you. And then I can imagine how difficult it has to be for people to transition to not having that anymore. And that scared the hell out of me. And being able to, be in a time where there wasn't social media, where blogs weren't big things and podcasts, to now be able to have experienced what I did and now share it, have people grow from it, and have this whole other life where I go hiking, I paddleboard, I ski. The journey's been absolutely fantastic. I would not change a thing. So I don't know if I strayed a little from your question, but it was never really a negative in my life, because there wasn't anything I wasn't doing that I needed to get done. I worked, I took care of what I needed to take care of. And now I tell people, and it's funny, I think I just put something on Instagram. I feel better at 51 than I have since I've been in my early 20s.
Yeah, no, I bet, man. I bet. Before getting into that transition period, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I've heard Dave talk about this a lot, was his only regret within his powerlifting career was maybe not being the best husband he could be to Tracy. Do you feel like with such a one-track mind that that's something that you regret as well? Or were you guys still able to provide each other that relationship that you guys have now? Or is it flourished now that you've put it past you?
I will always say I'm the luckiest man in the world. And my wife and I, we work together. We work together. We train together. I hazard guess there's very few couples who spend as much time together as we do. And we kind of laugh about our weird relationship, that we really do think we were possibly related in a former life. If you believe that kind of stuff. But so no, she was very supportive. And, our life was, sitting around watching TV, hanging out, eating. I mean, she is awesome, because being the greatest enabler, my wife, who is in, great shape now, she was up 200 pounds when I was up over 300 pounds. So when I went up a weight class, she went up a weight class, and she wasn't even competing. So I was very lucky. She knew what she was getting into. And, and we've always been open and honest and discussed. I mean, the only thing I missed some time with her, because always being away training, but she was okay with it. So yeah, I think for some people, I've seen a lot of couples struggle with it. Powerlifting, it'll take a lot, just when you want to train on a high level to do anything, it really takes away the balance in your life. And you have to know that, be prepared for it. And the people in your life have to be prepared for it. It's a very, very, very selfish sport.
Yeah.
And I think, if someone's not willing to participate or understand it or be a part of it, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a struggle for them. And I think that's where one thing my wife and I have always been good about is communication. And I think that's what couples really need to, if you want to do this and you're just starting out and you want to be, whether it's a bodybuilder, a power, if you want to do anything at the highest level and you have a partner, you're going to need to be honest with them about it, because otherwise you're going to struggle.
Yeah. No, I mean, communication is always going to be the most important thing. One of the things you brought up there is the idea of like balance and not being able to necessarily maybe achieve those goals by having balance. When you were solely focused on your ability to be the best bench presser that you could be, was the satisfaction on the discipline to commit to that, or was the satisfaction on actually hitting those numbers? And if it was on just the discipline, do you think having a more balanced approach would have brought a little bit more satisfaction into your life, or do you think in that part of your life that was just what you needed at that point in time?
I don't know. I'm going to answer it this way. I just wanted to keep getting better.
Yeah.
That's my goal was, it's funny. I love the fact that I was able to hold an all-time world record at one point. It wasn't a single ply. It wasn't a double ply. It wasn't a one knee wrap, half a belt. It was, when I powerlifted, there was one record. There was, powerlifting. And for one day, I could say I benched more than anybody on the planet at a certain weight class. When I look back, there's only two people that cared about it. Myself and the person I beat. When I showed up, I showed up to work Monday morning. There was nobody asked oh, I think maybe three people knew I competed. Like, how'd you do? I'm like, oh, I set a world record. They're like, oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I just always wanted to get better. That was it. It was always about beating the last number. It was always about hitting a PR. I love training. I love training with the crew. I've lifted with multiple crews at multiple great gyms. I think that's what a lot of guys are missing now. I train with my wife I will train alone, but mostly with my wife now, which is fun. But for a while I was training by myself. I love training with a crew. I mean, it was like a team sport. And I think that's what I think that's why you see a lot of people in and out of the sport. They'll come in, it looks like fun, they'll do it, they'll compete a year and they'll go. The relationships I've made, and that is the single greatest thing to come out of this. Again, getting to talk to people like you. And I just want to share with you before we go, I really appreciate how you take science and you make it understandable to people, and how the way you present it, because I think there's so much anecdotal evidence and just too many people just selling things that aren't necessary. And I really appreciate your work, because it's intelligent, yet you present it in a way that I can easily understand it and consume it. So thank you. But the people I've met and the friendships I've made, Jim Wendler, I'm Matt Rhodes, I was just texting with Matt, one of my best friends in the world, my buddy Rob, one of my best friends I met from all of my friends.
Yeah.
From lifting. And the relationships and the training, we would be in the gym for 3-4 hours at a time, and it's never like I was looking at my watch, I can't wait to get out of here. There wasn't social media, so you weren't looking at your phone, you were having relationships. And it's kind of like it fulfilled that spot that competing in sports, in a team sport, when I was younger, that you don't have as you get older, which was really awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I appreciate the kind words. That's nice of you, as I have a ton of respect for you as well. I agree with you. Like, the idea that the geared lifting brought together better camaraderie and teamwork, because you kind of had to have that, right? You had to rely on each other. Whereas raw lifting, you can do that pretty much anywhere, and that team camaraderie is not necessarily there as it once was. But I found the same kind of sanctuary, you could say, after getting out of the military, right? And having that camaraderie, being able to create my own gym and find a team that I could train with every single day was a great outlet, and it brought a lot of comfort and it brought a lot of ease to my ability to transition. So I definitely see the impact that can have. And I think it's crucial, right? To have the right people around you that makes you enjoy the day-to-day monotony that could be powerlifting. So that's a really good point. And I think people should try to cultivate that every time they can, instead of just trying to do it on their own. I think that would bring a lot more joy to the sport in terms of fulfillment than just training by yourself would. Because then,
Yeah.
because when
I
you
just
train
want
by,
to I just want to interject because I'm very intrinsically motivated. And when I trained at Southside Gym, which was a really good gym in Connecticut, had a ton of great lifters, a ton of top ranked lifters in the country at the time, equipped lifters. This was before raw lifting, but I was the only bench specialist, so to speak, there. And I had guys in the gym, but I did a lot of training by myself, but I still had them around me for spots, for that watchful eye. Um, I didn't need people to chase.
right.
I think a lot of people are motivated. When you're training in a crew, you're going to lift better. You're
Yeah.
going to be stronger. I don't care what anybody says. If you have people around you, you want to. And I think it would behoove a lot of people, especially now with, that's the great thing about social media, that you can, in Facebook and what have you, you can find crews. Like, it used to be years ago, you'd be hunting down phone numbers on some obscure forum to find a gym that might be 3 or 4 hours away.
Right.
A dead cat without finding a someplace you can power lift. And anybody who wants to get better, find people to train with. And the other thing is, if you are a useful human being, if you could spot, load, and keep your mouth shut, you're going to be a useful asset to a group, and you are going to get better. So I really can't say it highly enough. If you want to get better and you're training, by yourself or with a few people, I always found when I had people who were stronger than I was, and I sought out people. One of the guys who's outbenched me from my gym, who benched 910, when I saw him at a meet, he was not near his potential, and I had always told him, I was like, you will outbench me one day. And I brought him to train with me because he thought he was getting some special, that he was so excited to train with me. And I'm like, no, I know this guy's going to end up pushing me.
Right.
And I had another reason for that. And because there were two people who were very influential in my lifting and who are great mentors and coaches. But when I outlifted them, they didn't want to even speak to me anymore. And that's one thing I never wanted, because
right.
Deep down, I always knew this is just lifting weights. Passionate, I love it. I'll never give it up. But the relationships that have been made along the way are a lot more important than the weights that were lifted.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the teamwork thing, it drives more intrinsic value out of people as well, because you're showing up for more than just yourself now. You're showing up for everyone else. You are doing the spot and you are being there for them as a great training partner. So it does start to drive the intrinsic side a little bit more, which is, I definitely think, the key to long-term progression and enjoying the process and creating a little bit more happiness out of the sport and fulfillment, which is really important. When it comes to that transition period of being super competitive and now just kind of focusing on being a more of a, I guess, lifestyle type of person with the training, right?
Right. Yeah.
I know I'm guessing this is always to get better, right? That seems to be your driving factor. So it couldn't have been that hard of a transition to go from being ultra competitive because you're finding other outlets to get better at. Was that just the driving impetus? Was like, I can just focus on other things outside of this bench press thing? Was it a hard transition for you to not be, I guess, because we talked about that, to not be maybe relevant anymore in the sport and competitive?
The perfect word. Yeah, it was, well, I started cultivating goals. So when health became important, I'm like, all right, so what can Weller and Rhodes kind of laughed, or like, eventually you're going to realize this competing thing isn't very important. Once Jim squatted 1,000 pounds, that was it. He was done. It took me a lot long, and I'm older than those guys, and it took me longer to realize it. And again, it was part of the relevance, and it was part of having a goal. Then when I just started losing the weight and hanging out with Jim was a great influence, because conditioning was never very important to me. And being a lifelong asthmatic, I never, it's not something I ever tapped into. And then I just started really, like, I was, I'm a voracious reader on just fitness. And I came across something that just talked about, approaching 50, running under an 8-minute mile, how that's a great indicator of heart health. And there's so many things I still want to do. There's so many places my wife and I want to travel that I'm like, I think I was interviewing Bill Kazmaier once, and he had said, with all he had done, his goal was just to live to 75.
Yeah.
His goal now was to kind of, and this, I forget, this is probably 10, 12 years ago. And he just talked about just wanting to, and I'm like, so what can I do that's going to fulfill me as far as giving me a goal, and that's going to help me do the things I want to do, which is go hiking, go climbing, all these other activities, but can be fitness related. I don't like to run. People are like, oh, what's your running schedule? I'm like, I don't have one. I condition hard the way I like to, or I don't know, anybody really, some people like hard conditioning. I don't. I condition the way necessary so that I can go out once a year and go run like something's trying to catch me from behind, to run in under an 8-minute mile.
Yeah.
So for me, it's finding, getting my body under 200 pounds was a goal before the end of the calendar year for, 2020. So, they're all health related for me now, because I want to spend as much time on this planet. My mom, who passed over the summer, she struggled as a result of, she had lung cancer, and she had to get brain radiation many years ago. And we knew it would take its toll over the years, but it was a necessary evil. And she just stopped moving as much. And I watched her how she declined mentally when she started declining physically. And to juxtaposition that, my father, who's 81, who's like a shark, he never stops moving. He's going to be 82 in a week. He just went back to work the other day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I know movement and just activity is so good for you. And how can I melt those two together? And you can, it's strength and conditioning. So I have strength goals and I have conditioning goals. And, again, I really have a lot to thank Jim for. And to have people, from the team, we are so lucky that at any given time, anybody on the team, and that's why, Dave, I left a different sponsor to come to Elite FTS. I had met Dave for the first time. I trained with him up at Murph's place at TPS. And he was like, why aren't you with us? And then I saw it is a team, the way everybody's able to share. And I always enjoy chopping it up and learning. And the fact that we can all reach out to each other. I know when I have a question, I can reach out to any one of you, one of the athletes, any of the team members, which is awesome. And, I've learned from all of you as much as anybody's learned from me. And it's helped me towards my goals, which is great. I strive to get better at kind of just being a better human being.
Yeah, that's a great outlook, right? But that's hard for some people to quantify, right? After having all these objectively defined goals with numbers, now you're trying to be a more subjective goal of being a better human being, and quantifying that can be difficult for people. But I think the general outline in and of itself makes sense. One of the hardest things that you're able to do that a lot of people have issues with is you have a great ability to pivot and transition in your life. And it doesn't seem like you're scared to make changes in the pursuit of actually, like you said, being a better human being, living a more fulfilled life. You've made a career change at the age of 30, and then you've also shifted your physical abilities as well at the age that you did, right? How have you been able to overcome that fear of change that tends to hinder a lot of people from being able to fulfill life a little bit better, right? We always hear about people who are stuck in these jobs that they hate. I had a friend very similar to you, where he was in his final semester for his PhD in pharmacology. He has ended up accruing right around $150,000 in student debt, and realized, well, this is not what I want to do. I thought I was going to make a change in people's lives, but now all I see is that they're just writing prescriptions for people and they're actually not trying to help them. So he got his degree and joined the military because he wanted to make a change in his life. And I don't know many people that would actually do that, right? He's now in debt for school that he's not even using, but he's pursuing his passion, right? He's doing something to make a difference. How have you been able to do that when so many people are scared to?
Well, first thing I say about him, education is never wasted. I learned that because I went to business school and I didn't want to. My father, I wanted to join the Marines, which was interesting. I was 17 when I graduated high school, And the recruiter was supposed to go, and they came to the house. My dad is, I learned you're always a Marine. So my dad is a Marine, and he wouldn't sign me up. He goes, because the Marine's either going to make you one of two things. It's going to make you better, or it's going to make you crazier. And he goes, it made me crazier, and you're crazy. So I want to learn, I want to fly helicopters. So he said, I'll send you down to Embry-Riddle down in Daytona Beach, but you got to show me that you can actually attend school, go to school, because I was never someone who cared much about school. And so I ended up just going to school. I'm like, what am I going to school for, Dad? He goes, just go for a business degree. Just take a semester. Then I realized how much fun school was, because I was the first Dizenzo to ever get a college degree. So he didn't care what I did. I graduated with a 2.1, which is barely graduating. Just to share, I got a 4.0 in grad school when I went back for education. So because it's something I wanted to do. But I think just I've worked mentally on myself a lot. I read about self-help. I meditate here and there. One thing I've learned is there are no absolutes. Interestingly, I was reading about meditation the other day. You know, some people like, you got to do a half an hour. You need to be sitting. I read one guy, I would always be like, other thoughts would come into my head, and I'm Roman Catholic. I was brought up, so constantly beating myself up like, why can't you not think about anything? And like, it's completely normal. Completely normal for these thoughts to come in your head. Just let them go and keep meditating. And so I'm reading, and it's just a practical approach to life. The guy's like, if you meditate 5 minutes or 2 hours, whatever works for you. I read one because I'm like, I could fall asleep anywhere. So I'm like meditating, just, relaxing my hips with my legs up. I'm like, I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I fall asleep half the time. They're like, great, you're super relaxed. Your meditation worked. And I think so many people have absolutes. They have the fear of like, I have to do this perfectly in order to get started. It's like we talked about the podcast. I have this like, I need to get everything right. No, you just need to start.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm really good about. I'm really good about putting one foot in front of the other and just getting started. I'm not a fearful person by nature because I've made so many mistakes in my life. I had a lot of trouble when I was a kid, and all those things shaped who I am. I try not to make the same mistakes, and I just keep moving forward. I have super supportive parents, a really great wife, and really good friends. And I surround myself. The one thing is, I surround myself with the people that are positive. I'm really good at saying no. Like if I don't get along with someone, or someone's not company I want to be around, I don't keep them as company. I don't force myself into situations I don't want to be with. My goal is to be good to myself, to be good to those who are good to me, and just keep moving in a positive direction. It's perception. One of the greatest stories I have, I was running a 5K, and it was my first 5K. It was one of my first goals when I was losing weight. I'm like, I'll backtrack and say the day after I benched 605 pounds, I just missed 630. I was 328 and a half pounds because Rhodes and Wendler won't give me credit for 330 because they're like, you want 330. So I went to walk around the block where I lived at the time, which was a flat surface, and it was half a mile. I got around the corner and I had to stop. I mean, I probably was less than probably about 1/8 of a mile. My low back hurt. I was sweating. It was a summer, and my wife, it was the first time she ever worried. She said she worried about me, as I almost wanted her to go get the car. And, I made it through. I got home, the whole half-mile walk. Can you believe that? And, I was talking to Rhodes, and he's like, dude, just keep doing it every day. Conditioning is like anything else. He goes, conditioning is actually much easier than strength because it will come much faster. And so before you know it, 3 weeks later, I got a 40-pound weight vest on doing the same walk. And so I just kept, so to the 5K. So my conditioning was never good. So I'm like, let me run a 5K. I mean, it's something everybody should be able to do. I'm running it, and I hate running. And I'm miserable, but I feel the sun on my face. And I thought about one of my students at the time who happened to be in a wheelchair and will never walk in his life. And I'm like, man, how lucky am I? And I just smiled the rest of the way. And life is about perspective. I'm getting choked up because I think about, I've lost my mother, I've lost my brother, not great circumstances. Entire families get wiped out by tsunamis. People have tragedy. And, I think my wife had said to me, she goes, happiness is a choice.
Yeah.
So life's not going to be easy. It really isn't. But you have to make your choices. And I think, I've worked on myself mentally. I work on myself physically. I strive to be better at everything I do. I fail as much as I succeed, but I just keep moving forward. And because that's really the only choice. And I think a lot of people aren't happy with what they have. And I'm really grateful because I live a very simple life, and the fact I don't live beyond my means, and my relationships are important. Things aren't important to me, and experience is. So I just want to keep experiencing life, and that's how I move forward. Whether it's powerlifting or running or hiking, or I just want to experience, and I want to be good at what I do. So I practice it.
Yeah. No,
I invest a lot of time in myself. Again, I'm very selfish in the fact that I don't. I can have a lot of selfish things because I don't have children.
right.
Although I know a lot of people. I have a friend she did a fitness competition, and her whole life with her kids is about her fitness and their fitness, and they walk and they ski and they snowboard and they work out together. I mean, it's the fact that my wife does this with me, getting people on board with what you do really makes this a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can cultivate whatever family dynamic you have into fitting the things that are going to make them healthy and living a better life. One of the biggest things that it seems like you tend to lean on is your support network and building that group of people. And it reminds me of I don't know if you've ever read Sebastian Junger's book Tribe. Have you read that one? No.
No,
It just
but
Yeah, he's a field reporter who did a lot of stuff with the military overseas, and then he also wrote this book called Tribe, where it talks about just that community aspect. And he lives in a Dominican community in New York. That's a poor, impoverished community where he makes a lot of money doing what he does, but he lives there because the community is the best part of it, right? Everyone's taking care of themselves. Everyone's looking out for each other, and you've been able to cultivate that. And I think a lot of people strive for that, but it's hard. I guess it's hard to find good people in this world. How have you just felt like you've been lucky? How have you gone about kind of cultivating these group of people that you have that are supportive, that have been friends for a very long time? Like, how do you do that?
I have no fear, and I'm honest. So if I want to be a friend, if I want to reach out to somebody, I want to be friends with someone, I'm going to call them.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I love going back to the old forums because I'd find phone numbers. Like some guys would be like, oh, call me. And the number wasn't meant for me, but
Yeah.
I'd find the number and I'd give these great powerlifters calls. And one of the things I found is that the one thing people love talking about a lot are themselves.
Oh yeah.
So I'd call these guys out of the blue and I'd be like, hey, listen, I saw your number on, Go Heavy Forum. I'm a big fan. And, they'd be on the phone for 4 hours. And, and I meet people. I'm someone who's, I have a sales background. So talking to people, meeting people has always been, I'm a social person. It's funny, I live a bit of a reclusive lifestyle because my wife and I spend so much time together, but I have good relationships and I'm able to, everything in this world takes work.
Yeah.
You get out of it what you put into it. You get out of friendships what you put into friendships. I'm also honest with my friends. I'm a terrible communicator. My sister-in-law hates communicating with me because she'll text me and I might not get back to it for 5 days. And that's just how I am. And my friends know that, and that's how they are. It's not for a lack of caring. I'm busy. I'm doing other things. I forget. And, they accept me for who I am. I accept them. And I'm honest with them. And I communicate. And I try to foster things that I care about. I don't get caught up in the extra noise. I know what I want. And I'm single-minded in it, and I have my ups and downs like anybody else, but I work on them. You know, I've recently had a family issue that was really, really tough on me. And, you know, we talk about stress and how it can affect things. It really halted my weight loss for a little while till I dealt with it mentally. And when I realized what that stressor was, although I wasn't able to solve the issue immediately, I was able to understand the stress. I was able to mitigate it. I did some extra meditation. I did some some self work. I have a journal that's a positivity journal that, you know, I used to tell myself I have to write in it every day. No, I don't write in it every day. I write to it when I get to it, and when I need to lean on it, I go there. I don't have many absolutes in life because I find when I put those parameters on myself, I beat myself up for not doing them. So I kind of leave things open. And I think being open is also helpful in that not everything's going to go your way. Most things have obstacles. Relationships have obstacles. My wife and I have a great relationship, but I know I annoy her. She annoys me. I let her know, and we have our way of communicating with each other. But man, for a relationship to last 31 years, to spend the time we do together, everything takes work.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I will say that's helped me is I better have a good life. I don't have money problems. I don't have children. So what am I stressed about? I've Wendler, that's something he and I have talked about. He says one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever gave to him, because he was considering moving and buying a different house. I'm like, I don't live beyond my means. So I've taken the financial stress out of my life. And, when I had less money, I still didn't live beyond my means. Things aren't important to me. And to remove that stress from my life has been a big deal. And so that's allowed me to pursue the things that I want to do. When you can remove certain stressors from your life, you're able to live a much more fulfilled life. And I think a lot of people are chasing after things in life that aren't important.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with your value structure and the things that you value in your life, right? The people that chase money or success or notoriety are usually the ones that have a lot of angst and emptiness within their life, because instead of cultivating relationships and experiences, they're trying to collect a bunch of things. So that's a really good point, that I think people should harp on a little bit more. When it comes to the like self-awareness that you have and this intrinsic drive to be a better person, does that come from just your family upbringing? Where does that come from, and how have you been able to constantly, or why have you been able to constantly pursue that, where a lot of people kind of just rest on their laurels on some of these things?
I think I had really good parents. It's interesting. My wife, in discussing relationships with people, because I do dissect things, especially I dissect my personal life as well as my training, what have you, to try to figure out. I always like to understand, like, why am I so happy? What caused this? I'm always, I like to tinker with things. And I can share about my parents. My parents are always very super loving and supportive. I always talk about, and it sounds, this is a terrible example, but it'll explain it perfectly. If I was in a bell tower, as a sniper picking people off, they'd probably interview my parents, be like, "It's terrible, but he was a really good shot." So they always, with the mistakes I made, they were always there for me, always supportive, and I was always loved. And I think finding and giving love are really important. To feel loved is probably, just such an amazing thing. And I've been lucky with my relationships, So I think not everybody has that. And again, I think that's where that's something that I didn't really have control of, but having parents that love me, that raised me, that, my father became very successful. We were really poor when I was young. I wore hand-me-downs and what have you. And we were really happy.
Yeah.
So, as my father got older, my father is driven by success now. And it works for him. And he's 81 years old. He's happy. He's thriving. He built $1 million business, on his own, he and a partner, and he achieved a lot. When I was working, I realized that I was making a lot of money and it wasn't making me happy at all. And so I kind of learned at a young age that you don't need money to be happy. And I think that was probably one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned. I'm lucky. I live in a great home, a really nice neighborhood. But my wife doesn't care about jewelry. She doesn't care about cars. I see neighbors getting new cars every year. I'd rather not have payments and be able to not have a worry and, go for a hike or go skiing or go paddle boarding, go to the beach, travel. Life's about experience to me. I'm not taking well, who knows what happens, but, at least my experiences will last as long as I do. A lot of the things that you buy don't. So,
Yeah.
and and I've also, I've stuck. I think he was talking about athletes who would buy, $200,000-$300,000 cars in the same week and are super excited for that day, and then a week later they're miserable. I don't know if there's some kind of dopamine release from buying things, but
Oh, there definitely is for sure. Yeah, it's that constant instant gratification without the idea of long term success. And it's funny you keep harping on experiences, which is great because there was a study out that I've heard Daniel Kahneman talk about, and it was
who is
the
that?
Daniel Kahneman. He wrote Think Fast and Slow or Thinking Fast and Slow.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a Nobel Prize winner in economics, I think some type of economics, but he was talking about this study where people were asked about this idea of, if this was their last vacation trip, would this be the one that they would take, as far as the idea that people are more interested in trying to create memories right now with social media and being able to share those memories. And when asked if this was the last trip they could ever take, would this be the one that they would take? And the idea is they would change the trip because it's no longer about memories. It's about what can make this experience the best experience possible. And there was an interesting study showing kind of the dichotomy between the difference of experiences versus memories, and how this idea of trying to just go places to create memories instead of cultivating experiences is what's not necessarily going to lead to happiness, right? Just because you have pictures of something that you want to take so people know that you've been there is not the same thing as actually being there and experiencing it. So I think that that's a valuable lesson that you're getting across, because you've mentioned the idea of cultivating experiences a lot. And I think that that's important, right? This idea of living a simple life allows you the ability to be in the moment at all times. You don't have to worry about the future. You don't have to worry about the past, because you have open communication within relationships. So you never have to worry about what you haven't said or what you need to do in the future. So you're able to always be present and in the moment. And I think that's valuable for cultivating those experiences and living a more fulfilled life.
I'm looking forward to reading that, because you said something that resonates greatly with me, because my brother and I, when I was very young, we didn't get, we were kids, and I was a rotten teenager and I was awful to my older brother. But as we got older, we had a great relationship.
Yeah.
And, I look at it as though, he was with me for 41 years. I had 41 years of a great relationship, and there was nothing in the end that I regret not saying to him. I'd said everything I always wanted to say to him. Same thing with my mother when I lost my mother.
Yeah.
So you saying that really is powerful to me, because, sometimes, I feel like I'm stumbling through life happy. I think we all feel like we're stumbling through life, but when you can connect, those words to, what someone else has studied is very interesting. I was texting myself because otherwise I'll never find that book. Yeah, it's interesting because my wife and I are not picture takers. I mean, I have lots of pictures of my abs on social media.
Right.
Because they're really fun to have when you're a fat guy. But like, as far as vacation, we don't have pictures on our walls from our travels, our wedding, what have you, because it's so wild that you said that, because I know some people have pictures everywhere, and my wife and I laugh because our walls are hardly adorned. We've been in this house for 4 years now, because we're busy doing stuff.
Right.
And I don't, I can remember some of like we went for a climb a couple of years ago that, I think we might have one picture of, and I'm like, but I can remember it as clear as yesterday without looking at pictures. So that's really wild. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah, no, of course. And the idea of having no regrets because you're able to communicate with family is something that I've come across this year. As my dad gets older, he's pretty sick. And we happen to be in Florida at the same time. So just recently over the holidays, I interviewed him to be able to have an open communication with him because he's a very quiet man who's just a hard worker. So I never really felt like I knew who my dad actually was. So being able to spend an hour with him, talking to him in a deeper manner, means that like there won't be a regret if that's the last time we have that talk, because I got to know him as a human being, which I think is extremely important when it comes to family and the people that you value in your life, right? It's you got to crack through that shell, and it's important to get to know people on such a personal level, to where if they're gone, that you don't really regret the time that you spent with them. It's not superficial, it's deep and connected.
Yeah, and I'm probably share something that's you said that, and that's really cool that you're doing that because that's one of the greatest things that I have in my life is not having regret. Um, even people say about getting fat or big or whatever. I'm like, no, I don't have any regrets. It's regret is a wasted emotion, as far as I'm concerned. But even I'll never forget like being friends with Wendler. I know a lot of people wanted to hang around Jim or tag along with Jim. And the first time I went out there with Rhodes, I was like, I didn't want to bother. I don't want him to think like I'm tagging along just to, hang out with him or whatever. Because I had met him a few times and we were staying at his place. And after a few stays, like I was leaving, he's like, I don't know. He told me he loved me. And I was like, well, I'm big about like, I'll text friends and I have my roommate from college will be like, just on a whim, we might not talk for 2 months. I'll just reach out and be like, I love you, man. I just wanted to say that. And that's one thing I've always been very open to. I'm very emotionally open. I have a lot of love for people. I give love freely. I get it back. And those are the people I choose to keep around in my life. People who aren't afraid to share who they are and people I know who care about me. I'd rather have a friend, I don't know. I don't need to know anybody famous. I don't need to know anybody special. I don't need to know anybody rich. I tell my wife, I keep my friends by basically someone who would lay down in front of traffic for my wife.
Yeah.
If I feel like they do that, then they're worth having in my life. And everybody else is just, it doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean, but I don't need to invest in, I don't need to go, I will help you. I'll be there for people, but I don't need to mentally invest myself in someone who's not mentally invested in me. Those kind of cursory relationships. They're there, but I don't allow them to cause extra noise in my life. I accomplish what I want to accomplish. I surround myself with the people I want to be with, and I don't care how. I learned a long time ago, which was very cool on old forums, when I first started getting good at lifting, and people were talking all kinds of shit about me. I invested a lot of time in that. It really bothered me. And then I learned it was completely irrelevant. And I would like people to learn from me. I like to help people, but if someone doesn't like me or care about me or doesn't like what I have to say or what I've done or, I've learned that's irrelevant. Like if I put something on social media and people just started to rip me apart for it, I'd be like, whatever.
Right.
And I also don't look at a lot. I feel like a lousy person, but I don't look at a lot of people's social media. I try to connect, but I post stuff to try to inspire, but I'm too busy. Like I'm too busy doing things. And I don't want to sound corny, but I almost don't even care to have it that much anymore. I don't go to Twitter because it's far too negative. Yeah. I like Instagram because it's mostly a positive place by what I'm there with. Facebook, I stay away from. I love that I can attach to old friends if I want to hit up like a high school friend, which is fantastic. But the politics and all the other noise, I don't allow it to get into my head, because tomorrow when I wake up, regardless of what happened in the world today, short of a nuclear, blast, my life won't change tomorrow about what's happening on the outside. It doesn't mean I shouldn't be concerned about issues and try to do my part, but I don't get caught up in the noise of it.
Yeah. I mean, just focus on the things that you can control and live in that more of a simple life, which I think is very valuable, because everyone feels like they're not going to be able to accomplish things if their life is too simple, but yet you've accomplished a lot in your life that was personal to you. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? It has to be personal to you. It can't be accomplishing things for others, because that's going to lead to a very lonely life, I think, because like you said, other people genuinely don't really care, right?
Yeah,
to find people that do is a rarity, and you got to put effort into keeping them around. But the idea that people value what you're doing on a day-to-day thing, that's, the ultimates of importance, is very silly, right?
Yeah, I think Dave Tate shared, like, it's kind of like being at a wake at a funeral. There's a few people in that front row who actually care. Then everybody behind's kind of looking at their watch, going, how long am I supposed to be here?
Yeah.
and it's a very honest statement. It's like, in life, you might get 1,000 likes on something on social media, but of those 1,000 likes, who's there for you? And again, I think a lot of people are chasing things out there that aren't going to be meaningful in the long run.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to be cognizant of your time, so I just want to say thanks for coming on the show, man. Definitely exactly what I wanted to talk about. I think having a perspective for someone who's been at the top of the sport and been pursuing things, to have the mindset of the things that you have and that you were able to share, I think will help out a lot of people. It helps me out because I'm at that point where I'm getting away from powerlifting, not competing anymore, and transitioning to the things that you're doing, to cultivate a healthier life. So it's always great to hear that, and it has a big impact on people. So definitely keep sharing those things and keep doing what you're doing, because you do inspire a lot of people to live a better life. So I appreciate you doing that.
Well, it's it was a total blast. I told you I'm a big fan, and I look forward to having my podcast and having you on. And anytime you'd like to have me back on again, I'd love it. This was a lot more than I ever imagined, and it was really great. I haven't done a podcast like this, so thank you for your just the question you asked, and for being insightful, and for the way you inspire people, inform people. It was great. So I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, my absolute pleasure, man. And if people want to follow you on Instagram,
Vincent Dizenzo. I think that's it. Vincent Dizenzo. And yeah, that's Twitter. I guess I'm still there, but I'll never see it because I don't go there.
Yeah. And then elitefts as well.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people, I have a lot of people who aren't necessarily weightlifters, just lifestyle. My weight loss blogs are easy to find. They're all Operation Be Less Fat.
Yeah, it's a great blog to follow. So check that out, guys. Check out Vincent. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Peace. Thank you very much. Be well.